It's Dr. Tennant's Verbal Highs. Let's start the show with Lewis Tennant. Here we go. Guests and interviews that you're looking for with creators, innovators, and so much more. For all episodes and further info, verbalhighs.com is the place to go.
Welcome to Dr. Tennant's Verbal Highs, a podcast podcasted from a bubble in Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland, New Zealand. My name is Lewis from a bubble. I'm the host of the show, and New Zealand gone back into lockdown, bro. Back into lockdown, bro. Which is unfortunate. I was just speaking to someone last week from Melbourne named Fiona Bourne, who's my guest today, and I reflected when I finished that conversation about how much of a struggle it must have been for everyone in cities such as Melbourne that have been in lockdown for so long, and particularly at home, obviously, because Fiona's an old friend, and I lived in Melbourne for quite a number of years, and I have a crew of kind of like long-term besties over there. But anyway, so I don't know if it's irony. Here we are in lockdown. I could professionally potter. I've got no problem with pottering. In fact, pottering and, constructive pottering and combined with kind of existential angst about what I should be doing based on deriving an income in this society as we understand it is what causes me existential angst. If I could just constructively potter without the constructs of things and stuff that you have to do through work, I think I could probably do this forever. I might need a hamster wheel out the back as I'm in an apartment, and I'd like to not be airlifted out of here one day covered in melted chocolate. But otherwise, I think I could do lockdown okay if it wasn't for the existential angst of holding on to things like income coming in and those kind of obligations. That's probably not true. I'm rambling because we're in lockdown again. Let's not dwell on that. It was lovely chatting to Fee. I think what she's done is quite remarkable. So it's sort of a two-pronged reasoning for approaching her about this. We kind of lost contact. But again, one of those people I consider once we're in the room together, even though it was via Zoom, it kind of feels like where we left off. And the intro and Fee's reaction to seeing me pays tribute to that. Lovely in that regard to reconnect. But the second one is what she's done is quite remarkable, which is build from scratch and by hand a very large sound system in the Jamaican reggae tradition. Huge amount of bass scoops and mids and high speakers and amps and so on, and combine those with a knowledge of how to operate it, make it sound sweet wherever you are, and some great records, and you're away. People literally feeling music. You can look at the pic I posted for this episode for an idea of what she's built for those not familiar. And also I did an article on reggae sound systems in New Zealand for Audio Culture. So if you're new to it, or actually not new to it but interested about reading about the history of such the scene in New Zealand, it is something like the rise of sound systems in Aotearoa on Audio Culture. A combination of those words will bring up that article I wrote way back in 2013, but as it's historical, it's evergreen. It's evergreen in terms of the context. Fee's not in New Zealand. She's from New Zealand. She's from Palmerston North, and we chat about that, chat about coming on up, chat about a bunch of stuff. She's lived in Melbourne. That's where we met 20 years ago. 20 years ago. That's crazy. Doesn't seem like 20 years ago. Time gets quicker. I'm going to be dead soon. We talked about both getting to Australia on the smell of an oily rag, lockdown as I spoke. Her being a Kiwi who has been living in Australia for all that period of time, existing within their economy, working for a wage, never drawn a benefit, etc., etc., etc. But because she got over there after February 26, I think it is 2001, and I got there on January 6, 2001, she qualified for no financial help from the government over lockdown, which I find quite baffling. But she's done it. I find it baffling, broadly, not particularly to do with the fee situation, but that's the situation for New Zealanders there, and kind of more shows you how bizarre kind of rules and laws are sometimes. I did some reading today, and my understanding is that even though I've left there in 2007, if I were to go back tomorrow, I still qualify for the pre-January or February 26, 2001 benefits, which is I could go over there and, for example, go on the rock and roll, go surfing in Queensland, mate. Get loose. Get loose, mate. No one's getting loose. I was thinking about the big day out today. Good memory of the past. Getting loose. A big day out. I mean, what a concept for an event in these modern times. The big day out. Even just a day out. Just a day in. A little day in. Maybe there's a Zoom version of the big day out that could come. We talked about her wanderlust, working for Crown Casino, not really realising what it was back in the days when she turned up, and what's kind of been exposed there in Melbourne that was kind of always apparent but has been exposed now. Talked about pressing dub plates. We talked about operating a sound system. I feel like I should get out of your way, and before I do that, don't forget Free FM. They're our lovely sponsors, Access Radio, based out of the mighty Waikato. In specific Hamilton. They're doing some great stuff over lockdown. Part of Access Radio is serving particular communities, often ethnic, special interests, and so on and so on. So if you have a look on their website for their on-demand content, you can see and ideally listen to some of that lovely audio gear they have on offer. Please like my show, leave a message, subscribe, and or share on one of the more of the following services. Oh man, I'm going to keep this intro. Verbal Highs on Twitter, Verbal Highs Podcast on Facebook, Verbal Highs on Apple and Google Podcasts. You can also stream via Spotify or iHeartRadio. I just give it away. I give it away to all these huge corporations. It's like the Sex Pistols 2021 version. But it all beams out from my own little corner of the internet, my own little piece of real estate, verbalhighs.com. And there you can find the New Zealand podcast directory as well, where I'm trying to log as many New Zealand-based themed or featured episodes and series as possible. Take it away, Ms. V.
This is Dr. Janet's Verbal Highs.
There's a friendly face.
Thank you. Kia ora. Kia ora from Aotearoa. You sound great, because the reason I say that is yesterday I've been a bit slack with these for a while, and I recorded another Zoom chat, and it sounded way more like when they don't sound that great, and there's all that. Have you done many of these with the...
I've done a few, like when it sounds a little distorted.
Yeah, and when I don't know if you listen to podcasts at all, but it's sort of like a bad phone call for an hour.
Yeah, I've heard some of those, yeah.
How come your setup's so flash?
Oh, it helps to have a hubby who's in the audio tech game.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've got this set up anyway because we've been in lockdown for so many, so often that sometimes I have to record my radio show from home. So, I've just sort of got this mic set up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just a standard here.
So I was going to ask, because I by the way, we're just straight into it.
Cool.
I was going to ask that because about a year ago, it didn't really feel like anyone wanted to hear about lockdown on podcasts. But for you guys, I think it's at a point where it sort of dawned on me more recently, like, I hate to say it, how sweet we've got it here, but
I know.
But it's more to your end, like a brief rundown from when this first all went down. Like, how's life been? You've been at home more than anywhere else?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I was actually talking to Adrian about it today, trying to sort of think about how much time we've spent in lockdown, compared to actually being out in the real world. And it's just been nuts. Even when we haven't been in lockdown, we've been under pretty heavy restrictions. So it's felt like the last 2 years have been just, constant lockdown, to be quite honest. And when we have come out of lockdowns, you try to just get on with your life and, not complain too much. But, I've tried to do the amount of times I've had to postpone gigs, reschedule, cancel flights. You might try to just go for that short drive out of town and you can't do that.
Did you have you had a main gig, like a job, when this all went down, right? So you guys get government assistance and stuff.
It's actually quite hard for Kiwis living in Oz to get
still.
Yeah, it's but for me personally, I finished working in education at the end of last year, so I was actually made redundant. So worst possible time to be moving out of the job that I've been doing for the last 10 years in the education sector. I finished study, finished 2 years of study and looking to move into a different different
area
realm.
Of work. Yeah,
exactly. And so worst possible timing. So actually, I've always got that mentality: when one door closes, another opens. So I just sort of took that as I'm going to slow down and just try to focus on planning, music wise. And I've never been able to actually just not
build a sound system from scratch.
Well, lockdown did come in handy. I'm not going to lie. I managed to build a sound system, so that's something good that came out of it.
But we won't dwell on sort of the bummer end of it. But I'm kind of genuinely interested in that. Like, so you've had to kind of hold it down with kind of no support because you're a Kiwi in Melbourne financially. Yeah.
So
Fee, that's a long time to be doing that.
And, I've had the odd gig and work popping up, like I'm pretty self-sufficient in that way that, I do find the odd bit of work here and there, music. So it's not all, bad news. I've definitely been keeping busy. But, I'm sure there are a lot of people struggling out there. I know that, Kiwis have been returning home by, in the masses. So
yeah. Did that cross you? I mean, you're too set up there now, eh? Like, I see that would be not a move backwards, but you've entrenched yourself in so many places there. It would be kind of odd moving back now, wouldn't it?
Melbourne is definitely my base. I've, the 20 years plus that I've been here, I moved here 2001.
Yeah.
The whole 20 years I've been over here, I've thought about, the day I move back home, because that's definitely on the cards. And I think about it a lot, and I've been thinking about it more lately, to be quite honest. But it is, it's a big decision, because, like you say, I've set myself up quite well here. Work's been going great, the music's been going great. So it's just a matter of, for me finding the right time, I think.
So how many, like, if there was no lockdown, no coronavirus, like the year had been like usual, like let's just say the last few years, how often were you gigging? Like more than once a week, or?
Well, before Corona?
Yeah.
Fairly regularly, I'd say. Like, but the last 2 years were a bit different because I, had quite a full-on job, was working in a coordinator role, was studying, so I literally, the last 2 years, I had no days off except for Sunday, which I was still using to study.
Yeah.
I had loads of stuff going on, but, I think we were aiming to, do, one big gig a month at least, and, just...
putting on your own parties?
Yeah. Back in the day, there was a time I was DJing full time, but that was probably going back more when I was working in hospitality, and I could do it with my eyes closed.
I remember, I'm trying to think how often you were playing when I lived there, but I remember a point when I was with Zoe, because I remember saying it to her, not that it was ever like a bummer, like going to work in the coal mines, but I remember when I was doing at one point 4 gigs a week, and I said I'm off to work, and just the way I said it was kind of like, hang on a minute.
I often say to,
work with green chartreuse shots.
Honestly, I don't know how we used to do it, but me and Yaz laugh about it all the time. She's like my music partner in crime. But, we used to it was like business as usual. I was at the point I was playing Thursday through to Sunday, and that might be 2 or 3 gigs in one night. This was around the time you were living in Oz. But, and then we'd finish up some ridiculous hour, and then, off to work we went.
Really, right through. One of the sweetest ones I had in hindsight, and I wish it had kind of grown. I don't know if you remember me doing this, but I assume that Big Mouth is still there in St Kilda. It's been there forever. That cafe on the corner, or it's like a cafe bar owned by the people that used to own the lounge. I had a Sunday afternoon there, and they'd pay me to play from I can't remember. Might have been like 2, 3 in the afternoon till whenever it shut. Good halcyon times. Do you think the coming back thing is that getting? Because I can't speak for you, but not so much when I moved back, but since I've been back and I've got older, for me, the pull of kind of key family members and stuff is a reason. Is it whānau for you, or is it just New Zealand in general? Because again, I'm not speaking for you, Fee, but something someone said to me that I kind of heard a ring to it is your 20s are kind of trying to get away from your family. No offense to our families listening, that's pretty common. But then as you get older, that changes. Is that fair?
Yeah, exactly. And for me, a little girl growing up in humble beginnings in Palmerston North, I've always said to people, it's not safe to stay after the age of 18. You need to travel and get out of town. But 100%, it's all about family for me. I can't even believe I've spent 20 years away from them, to be quite honest. But it is that whole thing of spreading your wings and, living your life. But it's hasn't been easy, but luckily New Zealand's 3 hours away, 4 hours away. So definitely I'm going back every year. Well, not the last few years, but, for me it is probably maintaining my roots, going back home. And, I do have quite a big sort of longing to get back to be with family again.
Without getting too deep, I also wonder, another thing I've pondered in the last few years is I don't really have a culture per se. I'm just a white New Zealander. I wonder whether being tangata whenua is part of it as well. There's a stronger pull as well,
Absolutely, yeah. My marae's in Shannon, Potu marae, and there's so much you miss in terms of culture and having those traditions and things that you grew up with. That's just the added kind of it definitely adds to it. To me wanting to go home again, but I miss all that.
Have you noticed since you've been gone? I noticed it coming back. I remember the first time I really noticed it was when Māori TV was a thing in New Zealand. But since then, do you notice that Māori culture is just more kind of visible in New Zealand each time you come back?
It's something I'm quite proud of, to be honest. Because, especially you look at the comparison, New Zealand and Australia. Australia has a rich culture, but, they are far from where we are in New Zealand in terms of, celebrating that. So, and I think I go back home and it's the little things to me. You might go to the library, there's a sign in Māori and a sign in English. And, I think for me, on my mum's side, being Māori, it's that connection to the land as well. And
so is your iwi from around Palmy area or a different part of New Zealand?
Yeah, or
what's your iwi?
Ngāti
people I went to school. Okay. What were your folks doing for you to grow up in Palmy?
My mother was working as a nurse for, most of her career. So I think it was the fact that she ended up working at Palmerston North Hospital.
Yeah.
Don't quote me on that, but I know that definitely growing up, I was living with my, grandmother a lot, when we were young, just while mum and dad were working. My dad was a carpenter. Yeah, mum was a nurse. So I think that's sort of how we ended up in Palmy.
Palmy's an interesting place for me because, like, I thought about it with another mutual friend of ours, Josh, being from Whanganui. Like, there's not many places in New Zealand that are inland. It's just interesting spots. Like, most people grow up in New Zealand quite coastal. I don't know where I'm going with this, but there's something in those towns that are, like, in the middle. There ain't many of them, you know?
I mean, I think, you know, even though it was a small town, but, I'd say, I mean, I've got family all up the North Island between Wellington all the way up to Auckland, you know, so Palmy was kind of nice middle area, I guess. You know, I could always head up to Wellington in my later teens if we wanted to do anything. But, you know, well, there's not much to do in Palmy, to be honest.
It is curious. It is curious. Let's spend the next hour on Palmerston North. It is curious because the thing you said about you need to kind of get out and spread your wings and stuff. And, I don't knock people who make different choices. Some people just want to settle down, have a lot of kids straight away, great. But it does buzz me out when I go back to, like, the eastern suburbs in Welly, where I grew up. And there's people from, you know, my generation who've kind of like clearly never left there, eh? You know, different, as I say, different strokes for different folks. But I'd imagine when you go back to Palmy and there are those people there, it's like, it is quite a different mentality staying somewhere like there, right?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
there.
And at the same time, it's heartwarming, you know, for me. I like it. There's, you know, on one side, I think I'm not, you know, I couldn't do it myself, you know, like I needed to get out. But I do love being able to go home and knowing that things don't change and seeing those old faces and people who are just, you know, solid friends that I've known from high school. You know,
that's a good flip on it. If you went back and everything had changed, it would be quite a bummer. It'd be like your family home had been torn down or something, right?
Yeah.
What was the plan when you first? Because you got, I think probably the first flat that you lived in was that share place where we paid that guy in cash every Thursday night. Do you remember that? He was a nice enough fella. He looked a bit like a Robbie Williams.
What a blast from the past!
What a blast from the past! Yeah, on something street in Pran.
That's hilarious. That's right.
That's right.
New trans station.
It's quite a good deal for me. It was like $120 a week for everything. Use as much power as you want, everything. But yeah,
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure it wasn't legal, that place.
Nah. If there'd have been, like Graham always said, if there'd been, like, what he was doing was fair enough, but if there'd been something like a fire there, man, he would have been like front page of the Herald Sun. But it was good for us travelling. But I was going to say, when you came over, was it just, here's another adventure? You know, I might be there a month, I might be there 2 years. I might be there 20 years.
Yeah, I definitely felt like when I left New Zealand, like I just felt like everything was a bit too comfortable. I was feeling pretty, you know, privileged and lucky to have the life I had. You know, I can't complain. Like I was, you know, back in New Zealand before I came here, sort of in my prime and just living a great life. You know, had no real worries, but I just felt like I needed something else, you know, and there was more to life.
Comfort can be kind of complacency.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I wanted to get out and see the world. And, you know, because at the time I was developing a huge passion for music, I just, you know, I think travel was a big focus of mine, if not to get to the UK, at least, you know, head to Melbourne and, you know, and the reason I did leave in the end was just because, you know, an opportunity came up. A friend was...
Was that Dwayne? Did you come with Dwayne?
Right. Came with Dwayne and his partner at the time. But
that's our friend who's been called Tyler for years. And to be honest, he chose his new name well. Because he's definitely a Tyler, not a Dwayne. Because I remember at school there was an anti-smoking poster and it says, even your cool Uncle Dwayne does it or something. And it's just like... But you were one of the few people, I don't know why, whether it was you shit-stirring or forgetting, but you were one of the few people who'd still call him Dwayne when everyone else would keep calling him Tyler. Was that a protest or was it bad memory?
It was a little bit, you know, it was a bit of both. I think I just refused to kind of have to give it up because, you know, I knew him as Dwayne. So, but in the end, I think when he spent $600 or $800 on a pony fur wallet, that's definitely a Tyler, not a Dwayne. Have you seen him around?
in the last few years?
Oh, probably not so much. Well, we have bumped into each other. We might have caught up, maybe a year ago, but our lives have just been so busy. It's that awful. It's that awful excuse. But yeah, well, I have to say, we haven't caught up as much as we should. But I don't think either of us hold it against each other.
No, and that's that thing of once you're in a room together, much like this, it's in a virtual room. It's kind of you pick up where you left off, right? I think there's also getting older, and there's also, of course, coronavirus. Another good reason.
At the time in Wellington, before I moved over in 2001, I was working in Amstore, living with some relatives.
In what Amstore?
Yeah, it's a CD duplication company, and that's where I ended up working. Actually, I lived in Welly for few years. I was loving it. That was a great job, and I met lots of interesting people through that because, a lot of artists would come to us and
get stuff burned. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So I think he thought I was a bit crazy because, I was there 1 minute and then the next I said I'm off to Australia.
Who thought you were crazy?
My uncle. I think he thought I was running from the law because that's just so me too. I'm quite spontaneous in that respect. That I'm not,
you kind of are, but at the same time, you are really you kind of put your head down with other things. Like I was thinking about all that time because you must have been following this Crown Casino falling apart, right?
A little bit, yeah.
You worked there for ages, right? And it's kind of like the reggae terminology. It's kind of like working in Babylon, right?
Exactly.
And you were in the high rollers room, right? You weren't a croupier. You were for food and beverage service.
Yeah, that's right.
You're like you know what's up. Like, was it a sketchy place to work?
100%.
Yeah.
There's like. You sort of, I guess, turn a bit of a blind eye to, it's not in your face, but you definitely know that there's got a seediness to it that,
it's like Big Crim vibe, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And, I sort of really despise that place with every fibre in my bones, to be honest. But I've been working in hospitality, and that just happened to, provide me with the stability I needed in the first year I got here. Always had the hours, so I sort of that. But
you were there longer than that, right? You were there quite a few years.
I'd say 7.
Yeah, because I was going to say, I'm saying that as like kudos to you because you kind of did the opposite to what I did, which is kind of flit around, but you did something that wasn't ideal, but as you say, it provided you that kind of base. But I remember, I think it was when I was still there that you said you're in the high roller room, and I thought, shivers, like, as if the main floor isn't like a bummer enough. I'd imagine that's like a kind of, as I say, a bit of a den of seediness.
I have to tell you a funny story because,
tell me all the high roller room stories.
Yeah. Me being the, just like, I was, young, not immature, but, just a bit like head in the clouds. And when I first moved here and the job for Crown, saw it in the ads, and so I thought, I'll apply. Got another interview. I had no idea that Crown was a casino.
That's so fee back then. What did you think it was?
I didn't. Well, because they were offering a food and beverage, like a hospitality traineeship, and I thought, this is what I need because I didn't have so much cocktail making experience. So initially, when I'd gone for the interviews and everything, it was at this place called Crown College, and I'd only had interviews with people in suits and and it was talking about the different areas that they had in their company, working in, the restaurant and various areas, and that's where I would do my traineeship. So I had quite a few interviews, probably maybe 4. And then when I started, it wasn't until I got the walk around and we went and down onto the main floor.
Oh.
I freaked out. I was like, I was a bit in too deep at that point, and I needed a job. So, there you go.
Oh, right. So, like, I didn't even realise that. If you'd known at the beginning, you probably wouldn't have worked at a casino.
Yeah, I'd say I probably would have turned it down. But, like I said, beggars can't be choosers. I was living, first few weeks when I got to Melbourne, had, maybe $300 to my name.
I think that's amazing that so many of us did that. I think I turned up from London with like But when I changed over the last of my pounds, I think I had like 200 Australian, and then just someone else has landed the week before, and they say, do you want to clear glasses here? And someone else is working there. And then I met Marion, and like we worked at the Prince of Wales in the band room for a while, and you just get by, you know.
Oh, absolutely.
To be young again.
I think the day I got off the plane, I went and handed my resume out to maybe, because I was staying at a hostel on Chapel Street.
Yeah.
First thing I did was hand my resume out to about 10 different bars and restaurants. And I actually saw another job there was a carpenter down the road from the hostel who needed, like a handy person to help demolish some offices. And me being a carpenter's daughter and thinking, whatever, I'll give it a crack. I answered the ad and walked down, and I think he thought it was a bit hilarious, but he entertained me, and said, oh, what experience have you got? And I said,
you mean basically because you're a woman?
Yeah. He said, well, no, he made a point of saying, well, I'm not going to discriminate here.
Oh, that's good.
What experience have you got? I said, well, not a lot really, but I used to help my dad out a bit. So,
yeah.
And, he laughed, and I think he could see I probably needed the cash. So he, gave me $100 wages for the day to just help move bricks, into a wheelbarrow. And
how can you fuck that up?
Exactly. I think he was quite impressed, I got the job done in the day, which he wasn't expecting.
Yeah. Last thing on like Crown, because I watched a couple of things on ABC Four Corners. I've actually found out all their stuff's not geo-blocked here on YouTube. Do you know that that Packer guy built, have you heard about this? He built a really high-rise casino for high rollers in Sydney. Have you heard about this? And it's built on public land. Like, they built it on a park, and now coronavirus has hit, and basically he's kind of done a runner from it all and had a breakdown because his neck's big. Anyway, point of all of that is, like, it's been interesting reading about it, and I hope they kind of get their comeuppance as a company, because I didn't realise about all the tax avoidance and all of that. It sounds like it sucks a lot out of Melbourne.
Yeah, I don't know much about all of that.
I was going to say, unlike something like the reggae sound system community, which is kind of the opposite of what's going on there. Do you remember, I distinctly remember this for some reason, like talking to you about it the night after you went, when I think you went to a chant down or something when we were living in Paran, and because of our like slightly prejudiced view of what a Melbourne reggae night would be like, we kind of both dissected and were quite surprised about how good you said it was, because I'd been to some quite cheesy ones before that. Yeah, but the point of that is you can tell me otherwise because you're the expert. Is like, I think we arrived at a good point in time for that music to grow in Melbourne. Would you agree with that? That it's kind of a lot bigger and stronger now than it was then?
Oh, definitely. I think because you're talking about 2001, aren't you?
Just vaguely that year, like moving on to the Croft and stuff. But that initial first time that I'd been out and worked a shift, I just seem to remember that you'd gone to a reggae night and kind of told me all about it. Yeah, so 2001 too.
I think I might have gone out with Aaron actually, and to be honest, I was really blown away. That was the More Fire Nights, which they started around 2001, and it blew me away, actually. I didn't realise that, how, what kind of, coming from New Zealand, I didn't really know what to expect, to be honest. But
also because you got your ears open, this is my perspective, like, in general, not saying it's worse or better, the Australian kind of, like, broader dance music sound at the time was really different to New Zealand, kind of a different on and off beat, a whole bunch of things. And so it was just from what I saw, a kind of not just Jamaican, but I think even kind of a bunch of Kiwis that moved over and stuff sort of influenced as well. Maybe that's from my rose tinted glasses perspective. So from there, did you bring vinyl over? I can't remember. I don't think you actually did. You bring a bag of tunes with you from New Zealand?
I'm not sure if I did on the first trip. I might have, but I know definitely after I got settled in Melbourne, every year I made a trip home and I would bring back as much as possible from my collection. Yeah. And so after 20 years, my whole collection is here.
Oh, really? You had to bring over that much?
There's still, I'd say in the first 5 years, yeah, it was just multiple trips. You know, whenever I went home, I'd bring more back, fill up my suitcase. But I've still got a few crates at my sister's sort of wanting me to.
My God, how many records did you buy before you left New Zealand? Did you have like crates and crates and crates?
I had a pretty big collection, like maybe not as big as some, but definitely.
Had a small carry-on bag.
All I know is that my wage back in Wellington.
Yeah.
I was paying my rent, and every single cent was going on vinyl once a week.
And so I looked through like some of your gallery photos, just thinking about chatting to you today, and I noticed a lot of the photos of you playing. There's still 7 inches on the decks, but I've heard from a bunch of people that the Jamaicans are making a lot more kind of MP3 and wave-based stuff now, and Serato and so on. Like, are you still buying a lot of 7s? Are they becoming harder to come across pressings?
It's really hard to find good music on vinyl in Australia. So these days I predominantly order online, from Waggy's, places in the UK or other online stores. And it has to be pretty special for me to buy it on vinyl, to be honest. Otherwise, I've kind of ventured out into, I'll collect MP3s, and I used to have Serato, and for me it was important to, I think, sort of make sure that I was just, up my game and on top of being able to play all formats, not just vinyl, because that's where we are now.
Well, that's what I was meaning is, like, you're saying you're still ordering stuff, but my understanding is, like, say there's a rhythm that drops in Jamaica, 10 different people do a version of it. It's not going to come out on 10 7s like when we're buying them from Jesse, right?
Yeah,
if you want to play that stuff, you've got to play it digitally, right?
Yeah. So, and that's how I tend to sort of try to keep up with new things coming out. I'll look online, maybe download stuff. But, I still, for me, I'm a avid vinyl collector at heart. So I'll be looking for those special pieces that I can add to my collection.
Have you done the comparison where you play even a really good wave versus a well-pressed 7 on your gigantic sound system? Can you hear the difference? Because when you're dealing with drivers and speakers like that, is there a difference?
Yeah, I think, vinyl is always the preferred option on a sound system for sure. Yeah. But, if you're going to go waves, like, waves the next best thing, you just got to make sure that you're playing good quality stuff if you are playing MP3s, I guess. And again, like I say, you can't really avoid it these days. Like, a lot of people playing controllers and that sort of thing. And if we're doing...
that's right. And it's the vessel for tunes. So if the music that you want's on a particular format, you can't really go, I'm only going to play this format if it means you're missing out on a whole area of kind of what you can do.
And, I still collect plates from time to time. So if I try to get mine pressed on to record, but often I might have to play it off a USB, So
how does that work for our less nerdy / reggae inclined listeners? A dub plate for everyone is when a sound system or a crew kind of gets a vocal cut about that crew, correct?
Yeah.
And
right.
So do you have preferred people that you pay to play around the world, or how's it work over the years? Like,
for me, it's I've got a lot of friends, especially overseas, who just get dub plates cut all the time. But for me, it's always been when I get to meet an artist in person. That's when I love to get in the studio and voice them, and I'll handpick a tune of theirs that I love, and get them to do a special. So ask them to record that tune, re-record that tune, but it will have the name of my sound. And
Housewife's Choice.
That's right,
And I like your version, because I realised when I said mine, it wasn't what I meant at all. Mine was quite cynical, like you kind of send cash in an envelope and some random sends you back, which happens. Like, let's face it, that happens. But what you've described is a much more the process that it kind of makes sense, that they're actually linked to that and they kind of want to do it, and you're there to you're directing it in some way towards what you want.
Yeah, exactly. And if I can't be there, I always try to go through a trusted source. You know, if someone I know is going to Jamaica, or you know that they're in the studio in person, and that artist gets a good sense of who I'm about, and you know what I want.
Have you made it over there? Yes. Like, it's amazing. Like, I was talking, I had Danny, I don't know if you've listened to any of these, Fee, there's so much media out there, but I did one with Danny Lemon.
Oh, no, I haven't. I'll have to listen to it.
Okay, someone who's, you might listen to one now if you want to hear back to yourself. You know, someone like that who's, goes without saying who Danny is reggae-wise. He's not been to Jamaica. I had, do you remember Jazz, who did the Wednesday Night Jam? Do you remember Jazz? Anyway, I had guy who did the Wednesday Night Jam for ages in the 90s, worked at Flipside as their hip-hop guy, never been to New York, you know?
Yeah.
You haven't been to Jamaica, right?
I can't, you know, to this day I can't believe it. But I know that, you know, when Yaz and I sort of met around 2004, she's the other half of Housewife's Choice. But we always planned to go to Jamaica. And I know that, you know, during that time when Jesse I was travelling over there regularly and taking PBS members over, there was, I can't remember what it was called actually. But
I saw he was doing some sort of he was doing the tour leader, like the reggae tour.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And we always planned to do that together and possibly, you know, either just travel on our own or as part of that tour. But it just never synced up, you know. It was always when I had the time to go, Yaz was busy with work, you know, because we've both had our careers over the years to manage.
But actually, we're talking it's not like we're in our 80s and reflecting on the things we haven't done. It's like there's still plenty of time to do it.
Yeah.
If the world ever opens up again. Do you remember the night of how your sound system started?
The night
when you left my sound system.
Hey,
I spent ages putting this night on, folks, and Fee was on the lineup and had a couple of other people. I thought, yes, this is going to go forward. I was inspired by Roots Foundation in Wellington. It was our first night. We had a great night, and then by the end, Fee had bloody started another sound system. It's terrible. Left me in a real lurch for the next one. But look, who endured in the end?
As far as I'm concerned, I'm always a part of that. I'm just, you know, waiting for my next
waiting for the call, that's right. Well, on the gear thing for about 15 years or probably longer, I just actually lost the desire to play even for quite a few years. So I didn't really change any of my gear. But I'm just looking over here. I won't bother turning the camera around. But I've gone from zero to I bought this Pioneer controller that looks like the Starship Enterprise. It's nuts. It's like a full, you know,
is it full channel?
Let's see, I'll show you. Because, you know, it was it's well overdue. Look at that thing. No, that's the wrong, that's it there. This is
nice.
This is a visual medium, folks, that thing there. Lost first one in the burglary, but I've got insurance now. Get insurance, Fee. That's my advice.
Actually, we did. We've insured our collections.
So how'd you meet? This is when we get to your sound system, but something about lockdown. You said, "Al, how'd you meet Adrian? Just at a gig?"
Yeah, so he moved over from the UK in 2011.
Yeah.
And we met shortly after. So he actually shipped his whole sound system, and for people who don't know, Adrian's he runs his own sound, but he shipped his whole sound over with him. And
crazy.
So, yeah, we met shortly after he had moved here. And I think we properly were introduced at a gig I was playing at. It was a Pressure Drop. But I think we'd actually first met at maybe a basement sessions. It was a while ago now, but we were probably introduced at a Pressure Drop, and I was playing there, and that was, you know, the first time we'd properly hung out. And,
right.
You know, I think I remember we just talked for a few hours. You know, it was that kind of you know, we both were just on the same level, talking music and everything. And yeah, so that's how we met.
So that's a big, coming over in your early 20s with $100 or $200 from New Zealand and, you know, carry-on luggage, that's very different to coming from all the way over the other side of the world and shipping over your sound system. What was it that drew him to Melbourne first? Was there already family here or work
Yeah, definitely work. I think at the time he was working in a lab, Science is sort of his background.
Right.
And he wasn't enjoying the work at the time. I think it was where he was working. And that was the time of the GFC? What?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm terrible with acronyms.
People were losing
global
jobs.
financial crisis. Yes.
Yeah. So, people were losing jobs left, right and centre, and I don't think he kind of realised how severe the situation was at the time, and he left his job, and then he realised he couldn't get work at all. So that the fact that his brother was living here, I think at the time in Brisbane, he decided to follow his brother to try and get work in Australia, and it wasn't an accident that he arrived in Melbourne. You know, he did his research. He's a sound system fanatic, and so he knew of hardcore hi-fi in Melbourne, and that's the reason he chose this city.
So sound systems are interesting concept because I wrote quite a few years ago for Audio Culture. Have you seen that New Zealand website, Audio Culture, that has different stories about New Zealand music? Ring a bell? No, it's all right. Again, there's a lot of internet out there.
Yeah.
I wrote a story for them called The Rise of Sound Systems in Aotearoa. So it's sort of like from, now I'm going to blank, 12 Tribes of Israel in Auckland, Roots Foundation, Jaffa Mafia, Toby now, da-da-da-da. Mm-hmm. And someone in the article, the way they framed it, I quoted him too because he wanted it. He didn't mind it on the record. Was he said that like calling yourself a sound system but having no actual physical sound system was like something like being a race car driver with no racing car or something. But coming up in Wellington, and the fact that I think things like the internet have really changed this sort of thing. Like there were a bunch of sound systems that, as we knew it, were kind of collectives of DJs, and often they kind of complement together. An example of Roots Foundation, Moo playing freaky stuff later at night, Lemon playing earlier. There's been a real switch in Melbourne, right? There's I don't think there were any built systems when we first lived there, right? How many are there now?
I think, well, I know that, hardcore was definitely, the first one around. I'm trying to think of another sound system that was around before him. Anyway, I'm more asking, I'd say roughly. You probably know exactly how many are there out there, kind of publicly playing now.
Yeah,
so since Adrian arrived in 2011, he was probably the second or third sound system in Australia, and then roughly, and then now you're looking at, God, I think there's maybe 60 across Australia.
Wow.
30, maybe up to 30 in Melbourne. I'll have, yeah.
And are they all kind of, in one way or another, kind of Jamaican influenced or based, or are there ones that kind of play like Goa trance, or, you know what I mean? Like, yeah.
There's definitely a broad spectrum now, so there's...
Because Bushstuff's big in Australia, mate.
Yeah.
Love it, yeah.
You've got... I don't want to name them because in case I get it wrong, but there's definitely... You've got your techno crews, drum and bass.
Yeah.
Lots of reggae sounds out there. There's a few... that play, well, there's one that plays cumbia.
Wow, yeah, great.
Broad spectrum.
You guys need someone to start like a street festival, kind of Notting Hill style. No, seriously, Well,
that's the dream, and I laugh, but I have to say that's kind of, we've been doing gigs and events, but the aim of the game is to work up to something like that.
Even people who don't normally regularly go to things like that, if they're out in public, that's how my love of reggae started. I remember it was they used to have this thing called Summer City in Wellington. It was like free city council gigs, and I remember being like a kid and not, obviously Bob Marley and stuff, but I just remember watching the bands and the DJs and stuff and just going, this music's just kind of really speaks to me. So with Housewives Choice, before you built the system, the sort of things you don't ask people when you're just hanging out with them day to day. How do you, because it's the two of you, but didn't it used to be three of you to get collectively as the sound system, as regular DJs?
At one point, because I met Yaz in 2004, and by default, her cousin Andy.
Oh, is that her cousin?
Yeah,
Right.
so her cousin Andy used to they were inseparable, and they used to hang out, and, we were going to parties all the time, and by default we kind of were just like this threesome. And then, so, Yaz and I, we started playing together, and, Andy was just always there. She had a car at the time, so she'd drive us to gigs, and
It's
we'd all
like
go
Wayne's
together.
World.
and then she got into, she loved music as well, equally. And it just, it was, it just kind of happened quite organically. And, she started buying some vinyl, and, it was like, well, why don't you join us? But, we were together, probably the three of us, maybe for a good year or so. But
it's been you two are the sound system for however many years now. So my question is, like, again, wouldn't think to ask back in the day. You probably even got more of a sense to answer me now. Like, I know you'll collectively go one-on-one or whatever, but what's your different approach? Like, how do the two of you come together complementary in the music you play?
Yeah, so I think before we built the sound, we were already thinking, about ways to evolve, and how we could, how do I put it? We were we were already thinking about how to build onto what we already had, and so we, just trying to up our game a bit. And so the focus became a bit more on, well, Yaz has got great mic skills. I'm a bit more behind the scenes. I love to sort of just sit behind my equipment and do my thing, and not have to really talk to anyone. And so, so we started focusing on that element, like, bringing in the mic a bit more into our performances. And
but so musically, in terms of the tunes you play, you're quite similar in your taste, or is there like, because I was thinking that as well, like, or are you coming at it with two different angles that come together?
We complement each other in the way that, we've got very similar tastes in roots reggae. I think,
Great.
That's what, when we first met 2001, that was the key thing, that kind of, I guess, where we just clicked instantly. We had very similar tastes in modern roots reggae.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, we play across the board, ska, rocksteady, dance hall, but very similar tastes, but also independently of each other. We both had, Yaz comes from a family of, jazz lovers. So, and, equally I've got a different background. I come from, before I started collecting reggae, I was heavily into collecting house, techno, drum and bass, hip hop. So, good
Lower North Island approach to dance music here.
And I did, over the years, I've really appreciated that about Yaz as well. That we, have, like, our sound is rooted in, reggae and roots reggae, but we're not those kind of people that just play reggae. Like,
no, I think it's like, and again, each to their own. It's like the people like back in the day, who are like, so it's hip hop or die, or it's drum and bass or die. I think that's really limiting, and I've always kind of thought that is really limiting. And I also think, and I'm totally preaching to the choir here, that even if you do play a whole night or a whole session of Roots Revive, it comes through that you kind of listen to a whole lot of other stuff as well. Incidentally, that era of when we're buying lots of records off Jesse, you do call, like, I guess that modern Roots is called Roots Revive, right? That kind of style, that sound. Around that era, there was a lot of stuff that was right up my alley, like the best of the Sizzler stuff, the Capleton stuff, Raj Shiloh, like
Exterminator.
Right.
Level.
So this is me probably woefully out of touch. Like, has that kind of sound changed, or is it just something that endures? Like, people keep making that stuff and it keeps sounding fresh.
Yeah, to me, those sounds that you're talking about, they're classic, like that. Yeah. Never die, I think. But
but at the time, they were new. That's how old we are now.
Yeah, and definitely the sound's always changing and evolving, especially with dancehall and new artists coming up. But
I was into really disgusting, grimy stuff as well, like just really kind of hard dancehall rhythms with a Capleton, Jessie was always like, you would buy such a weird range of stuff, and it's kind of coming back to what you were saying. It's like, if it sounds good, I'll kind of listen to it. It might not be the best putting it together in a set later on, but and then another thing you mentioned when you said like kind of sitting back, turning the mic up and that sort of stuff, that the whole other thing that gets introduced when you run a sound system, and you'll know this because you've done it and I haven't, but I started going to Lion Rockers gigs here, and they've actually talked about this, so I'm not speaking out of turn. Like, there's the DJing, there's the MCing, but then there's actually like the operating, like actually learning how to run all those racks and stuff. And for quite a while, like, I'd really loved going to the Lion Rockers gigs, but they were pretty hairy. It was kind of almost like they were trying to keep the sound system on the runway. How have you gone with that? Like actually, is operating a thing that's quite difficult to learn, like, while you're playing it?
Definitely. I've got, no qualms in saying I am, still learning. Like, there is so much to learn, and I've had the best teacher, in my husband. And, I think it's our passion for music. I think we're sort of like those crazy people, like, where it's kind of a good and a bad thing, because we egg each other on. There's always new equipment coming into the house, and but certainly for me,
you haven't set them up against each other, have you, in the backyard?
Oh, well,
how are your neighbours? What are your neighbours like? Do they like music?
Our neighbours are great. They're,
okay. So you've been able to test it. You've been able to like what would you say with a car? You've been able to open it up on the motorway a few times in the backyard?
Yeah. But we try to, we'll normally ask a friend to, take it into a warehouse or something, so we can really push it properly. But what was your question?
Yeah. Sorry, that's classic me. I just took you off track. I was saying that I have learned, since sound systems have become, the actual physical manifestations of them have become big in Australasia, I have learned by going to Lion Rockers that operating is a whole thing to learn. And you basically said, yes, it is. It's learning how to run the boxes and EQs and amps and all of that stuff.
And, you're only as, you can have the best equipment, but it comes down to the person operating it all. You got to know what you're doing. So,
and you got to know what you're doing dependent on the space and all sorts of things, right? It's kind of like engineering a band, eh? Yeah. And so, what is it? What have you built, Fee? Like, what is the equipment put together? How much sound does it put out?
My boxes are custom designed. You can't get the plans anywhere. So
you designed them?
Yeah. So it was quite a long process. Probably spent the first 2 years, sort of sourcing, designing, reading up on the internet.
So you had to read about, like, I'm guessing...
forums and...
No, but I'm saying, like, it would be about the right angles and stuff for acoustics and that sort of stuff. There's probably a word for this that I'm not drawing. What is it? It's kind of spatial design for sound waves, isn't it?
Yeah. And also talking to the right people as well, because, like I was saying before, I'm like right at the beginning, I'm still at the very early stages of learning. So for me, it's kind of probably I might have started a different way around to maybe other people who have a lot of knowledge. So I'm, really good with my hands and more hands-on person, and I actually struggle to, I've got pages of stuff like that I've read through probably maybe 3 times, and there's a lot of stuff that still goes over my head.
It's just jargon. Yeah.
So for me it was about a lot of reading, but more asking questions and thinking about what I actually wanted from a sound system, and okay, how do I get that sound, So
as an example, your one is acoustically designed different to Adrian's in terms of the sound that it outputs.
Yeah. So my rig is a 4-scoop stack run 5 ways, all through QSC amplification. I've got the 18-inch scoops, and My kicks are 15-inch reflex boxes. I've got 12-inch.
Now you're going over my head with the gear names. Is it stuff ordered from? I looked at some sound system sites. I looked at those guys who make custom amps. Is it that sort of stuff? Like, not the building of the actual the carpentry of the boxes, but once the electronic componentry is added, is it a lot of that stuff made by custom sound system people, or like where did you get the preamps and all that sort of stuff from?
Yeah, well, I did get some stuff second hand, but luckily for me, Adrian works for a audio company, so a lot of my amps came through them.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So, and with the speakers, I've got it's 18mm birch Scandinavian plywood, so ordered massive sheets of that, cut it up, and then. Yeah. And
did you just do all that because you said you could with your hands? I had no idea putting two and two together now, because you grew up with a carpenter, right? So you actually kind of knew how to use a...
Well, my dad is a carpenter, yeah. So I think it's more, again, it's... like when the build took a good 3 years,
It's amazing, man. Yeah.
1 year, the last year solid building, and it wasn't, pretty. It was, there were a lot of the times I was using tools that I've never used before. So again, it was a very slow and pretty painstaking process, to be honest. Like you certainly, need.
I think I remember the photo of you with varnish in your hair, and it's like, was it you?
Yeah,
that was me. Yeah. Well, look, you still got all your fingers, etc. So,
exactly.
Did yours help? This is such like a basic question. Did yours help?
Well,
you didn't say yes straight away. She's going to listen to this. She just waited till it was ready.
That's all right.
Yeah.
It was.
She would have come over with some great food.
She was definitely around during the process, but for the most part, it was my sort of desire and passion to build it, and
I'm kidding.
What we're kind of doing from there on, we're doing things like we have always done together, and
so aside from saying that some of the stuff went over your head, which totally makes sense, because you people do. Again, I might not get the field right, but kind of acoustic engineering courses and stuff to understand that sort of stuff. You must have learnt so much along the way, right?
Yeah,
about a whole bunch of stuff that's kind of transferable to other things now as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I still feel like I've got such a long way to go that I've only learnt a tiny bit, to be honest.
But you've built it. That's the thing. It's like it's complete. It's about learning how to run it now, right?
Yeah, it does. It definitely feels like I've got to a point where I've got my head around some things, and I'm like, okay, now it's about, for me, just getting the boxes out, and trying to do some gigs, because for me it's sort of learning on the go. You can't really just sit in your garage and practice, and it's about getting out and learning what I can and can't do.
And so when was the first time, and I know, again, lockdown, coronavirus wouldn't have made this as easier. Well, actually, arguably you wouldn't have bought it. Anyway, don't overthink this, Lewis. What the main point is, when did you first get it out in front of a bunch of people and go, wow, this is the first time we kind of played it to a crowd? What was the first event?
Yeah, so that was earlier this year, actually. We launched the sound in April.
Yeah.
And we launched it at a Forward Ever, so that's an event that we put on with, my husband, Adrian. And so there were 3 sounds in the venue, Adrian's Wall, Housewife's Choice, and Goodies Hi-Fi. So that was a pretty significant day for us, launching the sound system, and the vibes were nuts. We sold out, and everyone came out of the woodworks for that one.
Indoors or outdoors? Indoor nighttime thing.
It was an indoor warehouse party, but there were there was outdoor space as well, cool. So which was great, and it really was like a festival vibe. Everyone in that place was smiling ear to ear, and maybe as a result of being locked down for so long.
Yeah. You could have turned up with a transistor radio, man. You have to build that.
But I think every single person in that place, it felt like they came and shook my hand personally.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome, man. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was a great day. So, and since then we've had, lots of things on the cards, but it's just a matter of waiting till we can get back out again.
So now from like that's what it's all about, to like the kind of practical side of it, like what's it like moving the thing around? Like, have you had to buy a vehicle and all of that to move it?
Well, yeah, no, definitely.
By the way, folks, sorry, Fee, just before you go on about this, folks, the photo I'm going to put up of you is one I found of you in front of what you've built. So by the time people are listening to this, that's the system. Yeah. So moving that around, moving the thing behind you around, how does that work?
I built single boxes, so, with the idea that, they'll be more lightweight. That was definitely a huge consideration when I was building, as a female, and wanting to be self-sufficient, wanting to do everything ourselves. Had to really think about the design aspects. So, and that's the reason we've got casters and, I built handles into it, so it's easy to move. And some of the drivers these days, they've got, neodymium makes it lighter. So that's another, when I was choosing the drivers, that was another thing that came into play as well. But
so what does it pack into? Like, it's not like the back of a Honda Civic. So what do you, like, it must be a...
Yeah, so another good thing that came out of my redundancy at the end of last year was, I got a payer, and so I used that money to buy a van to...
A van, so it's like a stand... If you pack it well, it'll fit into like a kind of standard van.
Because we've got two sounds, we had to, really get the measuring right to make sure, because, our plan is to go on the road with the Voxes. So eventually,
around, even like going as far as around a lot of Australia?
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Definitely interstate. So we really had to look hard and think about what vehicle we would be able to fit, because you're talking about not just two sound systems, but amp racks and everything else. You can't just pick those things up when you get somewhere. Like, we need to take all our equipment. So it's a bit of a squeeze, but we found actually a Fiat.
What? It's a Fiat what? I had a Punto. It's not going to fit in a Punto.
It's a pretty large van.
It's a Fiat van. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And I don't, sometimes I have listener questions, and just listen for the name here. Toby from wherever in Auckland Toby's from asks, and he won't forgive me because I reached out to him to ask this, to say, what do you want to ask Fee? And he said, what preamps is she using? Toby, this is for you.
See, that comes down to...
Toby runs a sound system in Auckland, folks. So, this is getting into like real nerd weeds here. Reggae nerd weeds. Yeah.
Tell him it's top secret information.
Oh, that's the other thing with sound systems. You see, if they ever clash, they want to know what preamps he's using. That's an advantage.
Tell him I bet he'd love to know that.
There we go. Hey, we should probably end there, but because we kind of, when you do a podcast, as you know, you're kind of on stage, kind of performing. But once we've decompressed from this conversation, we should catch up again off the podcast.
Yeah.
Stay in touch, basically, is what I'm saying. And whenever this fucking virus ends, if you're coming back through Auckland, look us up. But it's lovely to see you, Fee.
So nice to chat to you.
I'm probably gonna. I'm trying to get these regular again. It's quite. Sometimes it's more. What's the word? Sometimes this is easy to do. Other times you don't feel like kind of putting together a big long chat, listening to yourself and all of that. But I'm getting motivated again. Yeah. And I want to try and get out one a week for the rest of the year, because that'll take me up to an average of 25 a year since I started this.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah,
holy moly.
So point of that is I've got one to get out today, and then I'll probably put yours out next Wednesday, but I'll be in touch and let you know. Okay?
All right. Hopefully there was stuff in there.
Oh, it's totally. We didn't miss a beat.
All right.
Yeah, take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, see ya.